Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to the Standard Issue podcast, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. I wanted to react to this Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny verdict because it is causing quite the stir, particularly with the race grievance crowd, particularly BLM. So let's go ahead. I'm going to react to it in real time. This is actually an interview with one of the BLM leaders on NewsNation, and she is going to express her disapproval with the verdict, and I simply want to react to it and share my thoughts. So let's take a look.
So do you not blame Jordan Neely at all? I mean, for what he did? He deserves no blame from your perspective, right?
Did you hear the witness testimony?
I'm asking you a question.
Or are you cherry-picking the ones?
I'm asking you a question. Do you blame Jordan Neely at all for his conduct?
If Jordan Neely was a white man, we'd be saying it was an opioid crisis. He was hungry. He was mentally ill. He had a muffin in his pocket.
I wouldn't be if there were other. What about the witnesses? Let's play again, just so we're clear on the race.
Play Eddie Gibson, who begged Daniel Neely to stop.
Oh, again, but he stayed there throughout the incident.
Play the ones that fit the narrative.
But what's the narrative? There's black women who were on the subway. It was mostly people of color on the subway.
What about a white man during cross-examination who said that he was afraid of Daniel Penny, the one who poured water onto his head and said that he was afraid? He was a white man.
Yeah, okay, so
I find this is interesting. So just to bring you guys up to speed, this is the story that is happening out of New York, where the mentally disturbed homeless man, Jordan Neely, was terrorizing people on the subway. This gentleman has a history of being a public disturbance. And this particular day, Jordan Neely allegedly was saying that he was hungry and that he was crying out for help. And Daniel Penny, the gentleman who came in to try to restrain him, was recently placed on trial because Jordan Neely ultimately succumbed and died. He passed away subsequently after Daniel Penny intervened to restrain this man from terrorizing more people. Here you have this representative from Black Lives Matter. She was asked a very specific question. She was asked, does Jordan Neely bear any of this responsibility? Notice how she never answers the question. Not one time did she answer the question to say, why, yes, his behavior was unbecoming. It was inappropriate. He was scaring people. People were afraid for their life. So therefore, yes, I agree and affirm that Jordan Neely does bear some of the responsibility. What you have to understand with this race, this grievance crowd, is that as long as they keep the grievances of the past in the forefront, they never place themselves in a position to accept responsibility for anything that they do. You have to remember, to be a perpetual victim, you cannot accept any responsibility for your actions because you are a victim. Everything that is happening to you is the direct result of someone else doing something to you. This, in my opinion, is the juvenile infantilization of Black Americans. They actually want individuals like Jordan Neely to be perceived as the norm and the standard and not the exception. He was hungry. He was crying for his mama. He was cold. He, needed something to eat. It is never, this person has been a public disturbance and a nuisance. They've been violating the law, making everyone else in the culture and in society uncomfortable. It is never that. It is always, we are the victims, we are at fault, and therefore, whenever we do something that causes the rest of society to react in the standard operative way, which is when someone is causing harm and terror to others, people tend to step in and want to do something about it. No, the Anglo-Saxon white male, who happened to be the hero of this story, will always be painted as the villain. It will always be his fault. Why? Because if you can demonize valor, heroism, courage, male masculine instinct that says, hey, here's the danger and that's the threat, let me go ahead and restrain the threat and prevent danger from ensuing, which is instinctive for men. The race grievance crowd, they have to demonize that, and then they have to elevate and celebrate the weak, emasculated, helpless male on the street who is black, who is unable to take care of himself. Why? Because he's homeless. He's unable to provide for himself because he has no job. And we have to sympathize and empathize with him and allow him to get away with whatever crime that he wants to, because it's not his fault. She never answered the question if any of this was his fault. And when the reporter attempts to ask her, what about the black women who testified, who were saying, this guy was very threatening, I felt afraid, and I am grateful to what Daniel Penny did, because we don't know what Jordan Neely would have done if Daniel Penny had not stepped in. She doesn't want to engage with that. Remember, she has to put all of the emphasis and all of the attention on the weak, helpless victim, because that is the black man that these grievance groups want Americans to idolize and to cement in your psyche that that is normal, and that what the Anglo-Saxon white male did, that is bad. Let's go ahead and continue.
And
what about the Latino man who was holding his arms?
I'm not the one identifying everyone by race. You are. You're the one who keeps telling. Why? Why do you have to? There was nothing in this case. Because when you look at the FBI, when you look at when hate crimes happen.
Notice how all of the constructs and categories that are being highlighted in this discourse are done by the black woman. She cannot discuss people on the basis of their own individual merit and attributes outside of their ethnicity that they may or may not contribute to this conversation. The Latino man, the Asian this, the black that, the white this. Remember, Marxism seeks, we know Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. Black Lives Matter seeks to separate and tear down America first by you have to disavow God and God's law, right? And God's standard, an objective standard of truth, right? So that's an affront, not just to the gospel, but that's an affront to the person and work of who Jesus is, because Jesus is the truth. There is no objective truth. Everything is relative, right? But then Marxism also teaches that we are nothing but these categories and power structures. And in order for the revolution to really take a foot, we have to break down and tear down these power structures. And so to do so, they have to identify everyone based on categories and constructs. And so I think it's so interesting because this man, bless his heart, I don't know this reporter's name, but Dan Abrams, that's his name. Notice how this man is struggling to connect and at least having meetings of the mind with this individual, because they don't even speak the same language. She sees the whole entire world. Her entire worldview is predicated upon categories and constructs and power structures. And this man is like, objectively, one man is terrorizing a whole group of individuals, and then this other man steps in, swoops in to restrain that man in order to protect the group. That doesn't matter in her world, because in her world, the Anglo-Saxon white male is the problem, and we have to demonize him at all costs, regardless of the fact that he came in a heroic manner to save the day. That's what this whole conversation is about. And they're not even speaking the same language. So therefore, this back and forth that they're doing, discussing this acquittal, the conversation is not going to be moved forward, because all she's going to do is cry victim and grievance and blame white people, because white people are the problem. I'm going to let her finish, and then I'm going to wrap up my commentary with with something that I am realizing and noticing that is the byproduct of all of this. And I think I have a reason why I think it is. But let me let her finish.
When you look at when hate crimes happen, when you look at when injustice happen to Black people,
but let's agree.
We don't get justice.
Let's agree to some. Look, I'm going to be doing a segment later this week on a missing Black woman who has not been getting nearly enough attention.
Send it to me and I'll share the post.
By the media.
Absolutely.
Because I understand that, and to that degree, you have a fair point about the way sometimes the media and the justice system handles. But not in this case. This case, even the prosecutors conceded Daniel Penny had every right to go hands-on, and the question became, okay, when should he have stopped? I understand that.
The time frame on that from the DA's office was after 30 seconds. Can you not concede?
You hear how asinine this woman sounds? In the heat of the moment where this person is terrorizing others, the expectation, according to her, is that Daniel Penny should have realized and been able to calibrate that after 30 seconds, it was too much. Forget the fact that Jordan Neely may have been aggressively fighting back against him and could have caused harm to him. You ain't supposed to protect yourself. Forget the fact that Daniel Penny was trying to protect everybody else, but you are supposed to be the sacrificial lamb for the sake of the poor, weak, hungry, helpless, didn't do nothing Black man. After 30 seconds, Daniel Penny was supposed to know that enough was enough. This is the expectation and the metric that these race grievance, race trading, grievance groups, Marxist, anti-God Christian bigot groups, this is how they think. Mind you, none of them are ever willing to sacrifice and lay down their life for someone else in order to protect others. All they do is sit back on these shows and pontificate theories, right? They pontificate theories. But the key thing that you have to remember with these groups, they have to perpetually make mountains out of molehills. And here's what I'm not saying. I am not saying that the death of Jordan Neely was not sad and tragic and that he doesn't have family that is grieving over his loss. All of us would, even when our family members, if we have family members that we know are doing things or involved in things that they have no business and they are on the road or the pathway that leads to destruction, we still love and care about them even during their demise. The point that I'm trying to drive home, though, is that one, BLM has zero credibility, but they are trying to emerge and contribute to this discussion to stoke the flames of racial hatred and ethnic division in this country. But what I'd like to remind you guys is that this is BLM. This is the group that grifted and stole your money, didn't reinvest or give anything back to the Black community, but made a whole lot of money and a whole lot of noise off of your pain. These people profit off of your pain. And instead of them being, they because they don't walk in the truth, they are not agents of light, they're agents of chaos. All they do is attempt to take circumstances and situations and they want to capitalize off of it by making sure that they keep ethnicity at the forefront. Victimhood is at the helm of all that they are and all that they push, for the sole purpose of disarming logic and reason and forcing you and wanting you to believe that you are nothing more than a helpless victim that needs advocacy groups like them in order to be loud and to demand that things change. I can't tell you more than anything that leftism, Democrats in particular, are nothing but masters looking for slaves and slaves looking for masters. It is like a match made in heaven. And BLM is simply just a microcosm representative group of these people who play a role to make sure that Democrats have a steady feed of slaves, people, unfortunately, like Jordan Neely, who are always begging for masters, and then the government, leftists, Democrats, the big master that comes in, sweeps in to save the poor, weak, groveling Black man. This entire discourse with this video really is nothing more than an old trick trying to be resurrected and hoping that it's going to gain some relevance and steam, meaning BLM wants to be back on the scene in hopes that they can take the place, I guess, of what the NAACP used to do. But I am hopeful because Black people, we saw enough of who BLM is to know that this narrative that this woman is pushing, it's baloney. No one is buying it. And NewsNation, for whatever reason, is giving Black Lives Matter a platform, I guess, to see if perhaps there is some legitimacy to their gripes and their grievance, but there isn't. I would actually encourage NewsNation. You could reach out to someone like me, and I will explain exactly what happened in this Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny situation. You have a situation where an Anglo-Saxon white man who saw the danger, he saw an imminent threat, and he did something about it. And then you have this individual here who wants to impugn motive and say, oh, this was done because Jordan Neely is just a poor Black man. When anyone who is objectively looking at this situation, who doesn't see the world through the lens of race and ethnic hatred, because they're not, ethnic narcissists, could see this is a situation where someone who was brave had to step in and do something about it. And I really think overall, that's the main problem with this country. We are so used to male cowardice that when we see someone actually step up and run toward the danger, we don't know what to do with that. And so we view heroism and men who are brave and who are willing to either take a bullet or take the fall for the greater good of the group. We are demonizing that. And I believe that that is going to contribute to the demise of our society, because eventually, when danger is happening around, unless that person that's in danger is a family member of the person that would normally step in and do something, women are going to be left vulnerable. Children are going to be left vulnerable, because men in particular are going to see situations like this and say, it is not worth me trying to be the hero to save the day, also that I could end up in a courtroom fighting for my life because some grievance, race baiting grievance group like Black Lives Matter is going to want to come in and try to imply that I meant physical harm and lethal harm toward this man on the basis of him being Black. So I'm going to leave the link below to this segment of NewsNation. I want you guys to go ahead and watch the whole thing, but leave me a comment below. I want to hear from you. Do you believe that, the homeless man, Jordan Neely, just wasn't a real threat, and that, the force that was used to restrain him was excessive? Or do you believe that Daniel Penny is a hero? He stepped in to save the day because he saw a threat and he chose to do something about it. Leave me a comment in the box below. And until next time, you guys, grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Standard of Truth podcast. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to check out the Standard Home and Living lifestyle store at standardhomeandliving.com. We've got everything from book studies, journals, and even podcast merch, so you can take a piece of this conversation with you wherever you go. And of course, be sure to follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok for more updates, behind the scenes, and daily insights. You can also stay connected at thestandardofTruthpodcast.com, where you'll find all the latest news and events, including live events coming to a town near you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Until next time, keep standing firm in the truth. Grace and peace.